Hello, welcome to the Wildline Podcast. I'm your host, Dan. This is a podcast about movies and how much money they make at the box office. I'm going to go ahead and walk through last weekend's top 10 and talk a little bit about what is coming up this weekend with the new movies actually opening tomorrow in previews. So last weekend, I think, was a little bit of a surprise for everybody. The Boss Baby came in at number one with $50.2 million. With a hefty $13,300 per theater average. I think a lot of people going to last weekend, myself included, thought that the Boss Baby at most was going to cap out in the low 30s, mid 30s. But it absolutely overperformed so well that it actually beat out Beauty and the Beast, which came in second. Now, I don't even know why this happened. It's funny because I had been a big fan of this film from like a business Hollywood Stock Exchange investment perspective about 6 months ago when the trailer first dropped. Saw the trailer, seemed really funny, seemed like it was going to connect with families and young kids. I think they would find it funny. Would I go see this? Absolutely not. It looks like trash. But from a business perspective, it looked like a really good investment. And to be honest, it was priced very low about 6 months ago on the Hollywood Stock Exchange when the first trailer dropped. So I bought into it completely, maxed out my shares on it. And about a month ago, I started to feel a little bit weird about it. There didn't seem to be a ton of buzz going on back and forth about the film. I didn't hear any of my friends with kids talk about it. They weren't super excited about it, like Finding Dory or Zootopia or Beauty and the Beast, of course. But I guess that didn't matter because, and I'm not sure why it did so well. If The Boss Baby had done about like 30 something, I would be like, that kind of makes sense to me. It's a family film. It just played to the right audience, the right time. The thing too is that Beauty and the Beast came out 3 weekends ago. So I don't know. There's some space there, right? But even then, it's like, wouldn't Beauty and the Beast kind of suffocate that market a bit, you would think? But apparently not. The fact that it did $50.2 million is really, I'm not going to say mind-blowing, but it is very surprising. Hitting the $50 million mark on a movie like this just doesn't seem to fit. It doesn't fit the quality of the film. And I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it's so clearly second-tier children's animation film. Like it's not Inside Out, it's not Zootopia. The critics gave it 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the viewers actually seemed to respond a little bit better. They gave it a 63% on the audience score of Rotten Tomatoes. So I don't know what happened here. I'm still kind of confounded by it, even a few days after learning these numbers. It just doesn't add up to me. The cinema score was an A-, which is very good. It's not outrageous. It's not like an A or an A+, but an A- is decent and a cinema score. The people went to go see it, enjoyed it. They got something out of it. Certainly did it better than Ghost in the Shell this last weekend. But it is a little surprising as to why it hit that $50 million mark. I really liked the trailer just in terms of it being snappy and concise and witty. I really got through the message of the film in a way that felt smart, that felt like they know exactly what they were trying to hit. And apparently they hit home run. I'm sort of just confused by it a little bit. The Deadline Most Profitable Movies tournament's been going on, and the number one movie was released, I think, this week. And it was Secret Life of Pets. And this is a film that was the most profitable film last year, was Secret Life of Pets. Let that sink in real quick. A movie that seemed honestly pretty cynical and terrible when just looking at the trailers and stuff. The fact that it did so well is really mind-blowing. And it's a reminder that the movie industry is a product consumer-driven business. It's not necessarily about quality. I can tell you right now, The Boss Baby is not a good movie. Those 55% score on Rotten Tomatoes, the 63% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes as well, and the 50% Metacritic score means it's just not a good movie, but it's making money hand over fist. And it's just, it makes you think about what the movie industry is about, right? And there's certainly cynical people that think it's all a money grab and it's all just hyper consumerism and capitalism, and there's no good thing about it at all. And I don't necessarily agree with that, but there is a side of a part of the movie business is purely profit motive. It's about making money. It's about selling products at the end of the day. Now, there is great art in that sometimes, and there is some wonderful, rich films made in that ecosystem. But the ecosystem is, at the end of the day, driven by money. And Boss Baby just seems like a very well-formed product at the end of the day. It's not a great film, but it is a product that connected with the right consumer at the right time. And as of today, it's taken in $57 million. So it's an absolute huge success for DreamWorks, even though it's so clearly a second-tier film to them. But it may end up making more money than a lot of their first-tier films that they spend a lot of time on. It's just it's a good reminder of what this business is all about. It is about selling products at the end of the day. And Boss Baby was just the best product this last weekend. Not to get so super businessy and cynical, but that's what it is. And honestly, that's what the podcast is about. I could do a podcast about the art of film, and that's what got me into movies in the first place, was just the artistic aspect of making a film and the effect that it has on you as a viewer. That's why I love film in general. But I just got super curious about the business of film and how a company creates a piece of art and then sells it. I just find it super fascinating because it's not something that a lot of people talk about or focus on or think about. You're taking an artistic concept, someone's idea in their head, and you're turning it into something that makes money, that people spend money on. And it's that process and the effect of taking a piece of art and selling it that I find so just interesting, and there's so much depth to it. There's so many different factors to consider. But I don't know, is like the Boss Baby an artist? At the end of the day, is it a piece of art? On some level, yes, but on many levels, it's not. It's just clearly a product that is an entertainment product that is meant to make people feel something, and therefore they spend money to buy it, essentially. And I don't think the Boss Baby is anything more than that. You compare that to something like other things in the top 10, like the Zookeeper's Wife, right? Like that just creeped into the top 10 this weekend after it sort of expanded a little bit more. Actually, that's a really interesting number now that I'm looking at it. I'll get to that later. But that's sort of more of an art film that has an emotional narrative message to it. It's not necessarily meant to entertain. It's meant to move people on an emotional level. I don't think the Boss Baby is meant to move people on an emotional level. It's meant to make them laugh and make them escape their life for an hour or an hour and a half. And that it's successful, and that's why it made $50.2 million. All right, enough of these artistic rants and bullshit. Number 2 this last weekend was Beauty and the Beast, 45.4 million, decent 50% drop, still super saturated on 4,200 screens. Per theater average is still great. Basically 11,000 per theater average in its third weekend. It's just not going away. I thought this was going to taper off a lot more, but it just has not at all. And I heard that they're releasing a sing-along version of Beauty and the Beast, I believe this weekend. So this number, I see it dropping it's going to drop a lot less than 50%. I don't know how low it's going to go in its drop. It could be 30%, it could be 25%. So Beauty and the Beast is going to make a lot more money still. Coming in number 3 this weekend was Ghost in the Shell at only $18.6 million. Wasn't super saturated. It was only on about 3,500 screens. Per theater average was $5,429. That's not great. Unfortunately, I think this is going to end up being a huge flop for Paramount. And I say unfortunately because it seemed like a really cool movie. And I talked about a little bit about it last weekend, and I didn't really know where it was going to go in terms of the box office. I thought at least mid-20s, right? I mean, it's got Scarlett Johansson. It's supposed to be a big movie. Production budget was $110 million. Marketing budget worldwide is going to go north of $100 million. You're talking like 210 without a lot of the other stuff involved. This is not going to break even. This is going to be a pretty big loss. I think that's too bad. I mean, the quality of the film, of course, was not, spectacular. Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 45%. Critic score, audience score was 62%. It's actually kind of in line with Boss Baby. There just, for whatever reason, there wasn't an audience for this film, and I can understand that. Like, Ghost in the Shell obviously is a famous graphic anime novel, and you would think that there would just be more people like maybe like my age in their 30s, maybe just a little bit older than the average moviegoer. I don't think a lot of teenagers would go to see this. It seemed, I think, on paper like a really good play, but when you started to think about it more and analyze the possible demos for this, there's just not a huge demo. And I think everybody wanted to see it, probably saw it this weekend, and they probably thought it was pretty decent. I mean, Cinema Score was a B, so like the people that saw it were like, all right, this is okay. I just don't think it clicked with people or something. The marketing was really cool though. It also feels like a weird time to open this film. The last week of March. Ghost in the Shell kind of feels like a October film to me. I'm not really sure why, but it just does. It's a little bit darker. Seems a little bit more like morally gray than your normal film like this. It seemed like a really cool and really well done film just on the marketing alone. There was no audience for this, unfortunately. $5,500 per theater average on an opening weekend is not, at the end of the day, it's not like a horrific failure, but in the context of that production budget, that's not good. And I think Ghost in the Shell is going to be a pretty bad failure for Paramount, unfortunately. So that was number 3, Ghost in the Shell at $18.7 million. Number 4 was Power Rangers, $14.2 million. Pretty massive drop, 65%. That's bad. This film might be in trouble too. It's done $64 million so far as of last week, and I want to take a look at it and see what it's doing as of today. It's at $67 million. Okay, that's not that big of a difference. Production budget was $100 million. That drop is bad though. Like, that's the sign of a fanboy front-loaded film. That's what it is, and that's what happened. People my age actually went to go see this the first weekend, a lot of them, because we kind of grew up with Power Rangers when we were like young teenagers and younger than that, I suppose. But it just, I don't know, didn't click outside that group of people, and now it's starting to go off the cliff. I can see it doing similar drops, like 60% next week. It's just not, it's not going to do well in terms of legs, and I think it might end up being a push for Lionsgate. They were probably very happy with the opening weekend on this one, but I think it's going to fall off the cliff, unfortunately. Number 5 this weekend was Kong Skull Island, $8.5 million. Pretty good 41% drop for its 4th weekend, even though it lost 500 screens. Per theater average is about $2,700, so it's still profitable enough for distributors to keep it in theaters. Total take so far is about $150 million. I talked a lot about Kong Skull Island over the last couple of weeks. That production budget is just too high. It was $185. That's way too high for this performance. I see it more as a push than a flop, but I just don't see it being a profitable film, unfortunately. But what will be profitable is number 6, Logan, $6.1 million, great 40% drop, even though it lost 840 screens. Per theater average is 2,600. Total take so far is about $213 million. Logan's a huge success across the board. I think Fox is going to be just really ecstatic about it. I mean, you compare Logan to Skull Island, and Logan's at 211 right now. Kong will be lucky to get to like what? I don't even know, like 170 maybe it'll end up at. Production budget on Logan was $97 million compared to 185 for Kong Island or Kong Skull Island. So Logan's definitely the winner of those two. Coming at number 7 this weekend was Get Out, $5.6 million. Great 36% drop. It lost 630 theaters. Per theater average for its 6th weekend for a horror film is $3,000. This is the story. It's the story of the season. Get Out's a huge win at $156 million. Look at that, though. It's at $156 million. It's better than Kong. I mean, obviously it had a couple more weekends than Kong, but they made this movie for $4.5 million. Like, that's just like, of all the things that I'm talking about this weekend, like, that distinction right there should be the most interesting. You can make a film for $4.5 million. Let's say market it for $40-50 million in the United States and Canada, and have it return $156 million so far, and it's still going. Like, who knows where this thing's going to end up with those low drops. And then on the other hand, you have Kong Skull Island, which was produced for $185 million. And then you got to add on, at least in America, probably in the domestic market, another $100 million for marketing, because it was an old school marketing campaign. It's just like, it's the tale of two different business models. And, when the Kong big tentpole business model hits it big, you'll get something like Rogue One or The Secret Life of Pets or something like that, where you're making like $200-300 million in profit. It's like, it's either a grand slam or it's a strikeout, unfortunately. Like, is Ghost in the Shell going to be profitable? Absolutely not. They're going to lose tens of millions of dollars on that movie. But Paramount hopefully will hit a grand slam of one of their movies that comes out, and then the $20-30 million they lost on Ghost in the Shell will just disappear with a $250 million profit for a movie that does huge, like a Rogue One or Finding Dory or something like that. And then on the other hand of the business, outside of the sort of the home run derby almost of the industry, you have things like Get Out, where there isn't much put on the line. $5 million, probably $40 million social media marketing campaign, and its return is outrageous. I mean, the ROI on this movie is going to be probably one of the better ones we've seen in a long time. And it's a totally different ballgame. And it's funny how they're both in the same world, but just of two different sort of origins at the end of the day. And I think the Get Out model, I feel like it's just going to become more and more prominent. I'll look at a studio like A24, who is notorious for doing, and Blumhouse, of course, as well, notorious for taking small films that are made for $5-10 million, well, almost like micro budget in today's terms of money, and getting, these huge return on investments. At the end of the day, like, that's probably the best route to go if you're going to become a production studio. These big, huge movies, while they can hit a home run with a $200-300 million profit, those are very rare. And there's a lot more losses than there are grand slams. And so I do feel like the movie industry is going to shift pretty quickly towards a more Get Out model, where you don't put a lot of chips on the line. You just make a really good product and see how the audience responds to it. And if they respond, you're sort of, you get a huge payday. In any event, so Get Out was number 7 this week, 5.6 million. Number 8 was Life, and its second weekend, 5.5 million, 55% drop. People did not like this movie. It was from the director of Child 44, so I guess that makes sense. I don't know if he knows what he's doing. I don't think he's going to get a lot of work after this, unfortunately. Or fortunately, I don't really know. I don't really have an opinion about him. Apparently this movie's not good, though. $1,700, $1,800 per theater average this weekend. Total take so far is $22.3 million as of last weekend. That's absolutely atrocious for a film like this. Big flop for Life. I expected this to open at least $40 million. Maybe $30-40 million. Should have been the range for this, and it can't even get that on second weekend. Number 9 was Chips, 3.9 million, 48% drop. That's actually a decent drop for this film, considering how terrible it is. 2,400 screens. Per theater average is not good, though. It's at the 1,600 range. They're probably going to get 1 or 2 more weekends out of this, and then it's gone. I talked a little bit about Chips last weekend. Stupid idea. I don't know why you would bring this back. And if you are going to bring it back, make sure that it's quality. Make sure it's like, when 21 Jump Street was coming out, from somebody who was from that era when the show was on TV, it seemed like a stupid idea, but they did something really awesome and cool and fun and fresh and interesting with it. Chips just seemed like just a throwaway trashy comedy that just used the IP of Chips. It just seemed like it's a terrible product at the end of the day. Number 10, interesting. I mentioned this earlier. The Zookeeper's Wife. I have a special place in my heart and my business brain for this. I don't know. When the trailer came out, I was like, this looks like a winner. And it confused me as to why Focus Features would push this out on a weirdly limited basis. It seemed like a pretty darn big movie that you could have released wide, and it feels like kind of like that book club crowd would go see it, like Opus Book Club. I think every mother I know of the age of 50 has read this book. It's doing pretty well. Its per theater average and it's is 6,000. And I just don't get why they pushed it out to only 541 screens this weekend or last weekend. It just seems strange to me. I don't understand what the point of that was. If you quadrupled this, I mean, you could have made a big chunk of change. Maybe they're just gonna release it a little bit wider this next weekend. That would be my hope, because it is doing quite well and people seem to like it. Anyways, that's the top 10. The big story here, Boss Baby way overperforms. Ghost in the Shell is officially a flop already. Power Rangers is becoming a flop. Kong is probably a push. Logan, Get Out are huge wins, especially Get Out. Life and Chips are flops at the end of the day. Zookeeper's Wife is just a movie to keep an eye on. No real smaller openings to talk of. The Black Coat's Daughter, that's an A24 film, but that's like already on VOD right now, but it got released on 26 theaters last weekend. Not really sure why. Per theater average was 12,000. That's terrible for a limited release. There's also a Donnie Darko re-release, did about $57,000 per theater. That's pretty darn good. I didn't even know they were re-releasing that. By the way, it's one of my favorite films, Donnie Darko. Let's take a look what's coming out next weekend real quick. I guess it's coming out tomorrow for previews. The Case for Christ, I don't know anything about that. Christian film, 1,100 screens. It's going to do all right because Easter's coming up. But I don't know. Who knows what it's going to do? Going in style, this is a really fascinating film. The moment I saw this trailer, I was like, this is something I can get behind. I invested in and immediately maxed out my shares on Hollywood Stock Exchange. And something happened along the way, though. The trailers were great. And I probably saw them in 3 or 4 different movies. And every time the response from the audience during the trailer was great. And then the marketing team, I feel like, just dropped the ball over the last month, because I had no idea this was coming out this weekend until about 2 days ago when I saw a TV ad for it. I was like, wait, what? Like, I thought there would have been, I don't know. It goes to show you that for marketing movies like this, at the end of the day, it's a Zach Braff movie. You wouldn't really know that necessarily unless you look that up, because they don't really make it that prominent, I don't think. The 3 leads are fantastic. The story is fantastic in terms of like what it's talking about. It's like 3 old men who basically lose all their money because their pensions are stolen by Wall Street people, and they go to rob a bank. Like, it's a kind of a funny, and the trailer is just like super funny. What I don't understand is what happened over the last month with the marketing. Like, you need to prime people. Like, you got that first phase of marketing when you create awareness for the film. This film exists. It's going to come out in the next 3 months. But you really have to hold people's hands the last 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks may be a little much. Definitely nowadays, the last 2 to 3 weeks are huge. You need to inundate people and remind them, this movie's coming out. This movie's coming out. You need to see it. This movie's coming out. And that just didn't happen with this film. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to underperform because of that. And it shouldn't, because the product itself or the advertising has been so good, and it looks like such a kind of fun comedy, that this should open. It should have opened in probably the mid to high 20s, and I would say 30s, mid 30s. Like, it has that feel to it. Super almost 4 quad feel. But whatever, Warner Brothers and New Line just dropped the ball with the marketing. I don't see it opening higher than like 15 now. Just really bad. Also, talk about terrible marketing. The Smurfs, The Lost Village. No one has any idea this movie's coming out. Like, I don't think anybody with kids are like, wait, there's a new Smurfs movie coming out? It's going to be a really, really weird weekend. That's all I have to say. I have no idea what's going to win. Obviously, Smurfs have the advantage because it's on 3,600 screens. But honestly, who's going to go see that after The Boss Baby did so well last weekend? I mean, everybody took their kids to see that movie. I don't think they're going to see Smurfs. Anyway, that's what's going on next week. Zookeeper's Wife is expanding to 800 screens. Again, what are they doing? Just put it on 2,000 screens and get it over with. People will watch it, I think. It looks pretty good. Gifted is also expanding to 50 screens. That's another one I'm not understanding. One of the better trailers I've seen in the last year was Gifted, and it looks kind of like a Nicholas Sparks movie, but it looks great. I don't get what they're doing. Like I'm as someone I know who works in the industry, it was like the movie industry has no idea what's going on right now, and you can see that in the way these films are being released. Like The Zookeeper's Wife should have had a huge marketing push behind it, and they should have done it mass, a big release. I could see a lot of people going to that movie. It looks awesome. It looks like a very interesting, rich, kind of like cool story. I think it's based on reality, I guess. I don't really know. It's a historical film. But it had that vibrancy to it of a mass appeal film. And they're just sort of like slowly trickling it out. And I think Gifted could have been huge too. But they're just like, they're doing this weird, super limited release. And I talked a lot about this last fall with Manchester by the Sea and Moonlight. And, what was the other one? The Tom Ford movie. I don't know what it was called. There's all these different ways of releasing limited films like this, or art films. And they're just, I don't know, they're experimenting with different ways of doing it. I just don't see the strategy behind it. Like, what's the vision? What's the vision of putting Gifted out on 50 screens? It's not an art house film. It's not Moonlight. Like, Moonlight is for a specific group of people. And I could tell you who those people are. They live in bigger cities usually, and they're quote unquote cosmopolitans, and they want to see a movie like that is like an impressionistic experimental film about a gay man going through three stages of his life. Ask the average American if they want to see that, and it's going to be no. And I can tell you that because it only made $25 million. It may have won Best Picture, but it is not a mass appeal product. It is a niche product. Gifted is not a niche product. Gifted is a mass appeal product. So why are they treating it like it's this special little film that can only play in Austin and Los Angeles? It's not. It's an interesting fact about the industry and how they're releasing films, and that they seem to be confused, right? They seem to be confused about what these products are and who they play to. And I don't know. I find it fascinating. I sound kind of irritated by it, but I find it interesting that the industry is in such an upheaval now, that there's sort of it's scattershot. There's no real long-term goals being played out. How is Gifted going to make its money back is one of the questions that I would ask. If you're going to put it on 50 screens in markets that it's going to play worse in, like, you know what the perfect market is for like Gifted? It's like Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That's where I went to school. It's like the perfect market. It's like a, kind of a mid-sized regional city. And they want to see like a movie that is uplifting. They go to the movies to enjoy themselves and, see a heartwarming story. That's Gifted, right? Now maybe they'll expand it to there eventually. But the problem is when you do a limited expansion like this, where it's only playing in 50 cities, they tend to not put the marketing arsenal behind it. And when you get a super wide release, they blanket the airwaves with it, or social media, or whatever it is, YouTube. If you don't do that, people aren't going to see the film. You have to create awareness, and you have to create demand within your audiences to see it. I just don't see that happening with Gifted. That was a kind of a long-winded rant. And I'm not going to apologize because I love ranting. So that's what's happening this upcoming weekend. I think Smurfs is going to win. Going Style probably will come on maybe a decently close second. And Case for Christ, in terms of the new opening, is going to be last. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. I'm Dan. This has been the Wildline Podcast. I will be back later next week, probably Thursday. All right, take care.